parkway stations usually serve one purpose: to encourage people to drive, park up and get on the train. Warwick Parkway, situated here on the Chiltern Mainline between London Marylebone and Birmingham Moor Street, is no different, but it's its history which makes it different, and in my opinion worthy of its own video. In today's video we'll delve into the fascinating history of this parkway station, how fuel strikes and earthquakes nearly caused this station to never be built. So join me as we look at the history of Warwick Parkway. Warwick Parkway Station originated in the early 1990s as a result of meetings between Warwickshire County Council, Warwick District Council and Centro, the West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive, for potential park and ride location on the Chiltern Mainline. A site near Warwick at Budbrook was chosen due to its proximity to the A46 and M40 roads, but after the confirmation of rail privatisation, things went quiet until meetings recommenced in 1994, involving the District Council, the County Council and the newly formed companies of Central Trains, Railtrack and Chiltern Railways. These meetings were designed to try and solve the parking issues at Leamington Spa and Warwick stations, so a potential new parkway station just north of Warwick was finally brought back onto the table. Adrian Shooter, Chiltern's Managing Director, and Alex Turner, a former British rail manager now working for Chiltern, usually represented the company, and both pressed forward the importance of constructing this new parkway station. After one such meeting, Adrian Shooter decided to take things into his own hands. The meetings were all talk and no action. There's a butterfly over there. Shooter contacted Peter Barnett, who led the Transport Planning Unit at the Warwickshire County Council, to confirm his preferred site for Warwick Parkway in December of 1996. The County Council were keen on the idea of building the station, and thus the project was approved for consultation by the Council in 1997, with a bid to build the station submitted in July to the Department for Transport. The DFT, however, instructed the County Council to resubmit a bid in spring 1998, as that may be more likely to be accepted. However, just after this second bid was submitted, the Department for Transport confirmed that it would be the Strategic Rail Authority who would now handle all rail investment, so a third bid was submitted, this time to the Strategic Rail Authority. This bid was actually refused, due to the scheme being, apparently, too commercial. Shooter decided he would instead do things his own way, canvassing £1.15 million between Chiltern and the Warwickshire County Council to purchase the land that the station would lie on. Whilst improvements to road access, cycle lanes and public transport also occurred in the area, including new signals with the junction at Birmingham Road. The station would be different to most, as Railtrack, later National Rail, would take a backseat role on delivering the station, which would be wholly owned by Warwickshire County Council and not Network Rail. This would mean that Chiltern and the Council could control the project directly, including contracts and the budget, with Chiltern employing this method for several upgrades, including at Princes Risborough. Chiltern would thus be the first train operator to build their own new station. There was a bit of opposition from the scheme from the villages of Hampton Magna and Budbrook, which are just over in that direction. They showed their opposition to the scheme in county council elections by electing councillors who were opposed to Warwick Parkway. Fortunately though, there was far more support than opposition for the station. There would be huge benefits for locals, including direct rail services to Birmingham and London, but issues arose with traffic and noise concerns. Locals further afield, including residents of Kenilworth, who did not yet have their own station, local and national rail groups, local MPs, the Midlands Rail Passenger Committee, Centro, Birmingham City Council and regional bodies all supported the new station. At the public inquiry, the pro-Warwick Parkway group faced stern opposition, with local councillors and residents outnumbering the pro-Warwick Parkway group. They argued, once more, that the station would cause disruption of the local environment, an increase in traffic, and potential downturn in services at Warwick Station as people moved to Warwick Parkway instead. They suggested that, perhaps, parking at Leamington could be increased, or was already adequate enough, although the County Council argued back, highlighting that parking at Leamington Spa would be taken up by the increase in cross-country services, which wouldn't serve Warwick Parkway. It was only 6 months after the inquiry that finally full planning permission was given for the station in March 1999 on a £5 million budget. Warwickshire County Council would be involved with all the non-railway related aspects, such as compulsory purchase orders, subsidised bus services and improvements to the roads, whilst Chiltern would invest in the railway side of things. They would work with the County Council on committee construction, using County Council construction companies rather than the unreliable Railtrack ones. Thus, the construction risk was voided, with costings being fixed, with a 40-year lease being signed between Chiltern and the County Council for the joint management of the site. The station itself would be a relatively basic affair. It would only be 2 platforms, with lifts connecting both of them via a subway. But the station would be far more interesting than the current new stations that we get on our rail network. The construction itself faced some issues. The idea was to have a modern timber-panelled building leading to an open area with an underpass to connect to the Birmingham-bound platform, with step-free access to both, of course.
Although on a steep bank, the platforms are easy to construct thanks to stilts, but finding a suitable role for a subway would be difficult and, more important, costly.
Chiltern pointed to this behind me, this 1852 Great Western Railway cattle creep, built to ensure farm access whilst the railway ran on the embankment above.
Chiltern made the necessary checks using a rotary drill to confirm that the creep was in a stable state, which it was. The foundations were deep enough and overall integrity of the creep was perfectly fine. So, Chiltern proposed the idea to Railtrack, who rejected the usage of the cattle creep as an underpass as it was 3 inches too narrow, according to Railtrack. Railtrack thus demanded a new subway be jacked through at an immense cost, or use of the existing path alongside the road at the entrance to the station, although this would involve more land purchases and would have meant a longer walk for passengers. Chiltern hit back, highlighting a potential cost of at least £1 million to build a new subway, and 8 for the total cost of the whole project, as well as several long line closures. Chiltern also went to HMR1, the rail regulator, and the Strategic Rail Authority, gaining approval for the usage of the cattle creep by all three. This was not a busy London termini where wheelchair users would be abundant. Railtrack pointed to the lack of space to fit 2 wheelchairs side by side, or 1 wheelchair and 1 person side by side, but there would be little chance of this happening anyway. The creep was far wide enough for any single wheelchair, bike or anything else which may need to fit to the other platform, with passenger flows being usually single direction, going to the platform for a train and then going away from the platform after alighting. Chiltern went back to Railtrack with these findings and endorsements, with Railtrack subsequently caving in. The cost of the underpass was now only £25,000 due to new underfloor lights and a touch-up of the brickwork.
The actual station building behind me will be designed with the utmost of attention to detail.
CCTV cameras would be installed across the station, with air conditioning throughout the building. Toilets would be provided, as would a space for a retailer. 2 ticket office desks would also be installed. The firm chose Creative Design, who helped design the Class 168 clubrooms, to help design Warwick Parkway. The firm also helped design the West Midlands metro shelters, so knew how to make something designed for public transport work. Galvanised steel components were used to help blend the station in amongst the countryside surroundings, to ensure that it was no eyesore, and was barely noticeable to residents living in view of the station. Oak cladding was used for the same reason, although, at first, contractors forgot to leave room to allow for the oak wood to contract and expand during different weathers and temperatures, so panels kept falling off. Mott MacDonald and Burst Rail won a joint contract to design and build the station. Construction would be as far away from the operational rail side of things as possible, so as not to get bogged down in countless to's and thro's with the rail authority, whilst also ensuring it would cost as little as possible and would have as little disruption to passenger services as possible.
The actual design of the platforms themselves are actually quite clever, as the foundations were built well away from the tracks and could then be cantilevered out, leaving an overhang, ensuring the platform could be built whilst not disrupting operations of the Chiltern Mainline.
There was one issue with the platforms. That was a sign. A sign was needed at the end of one of the platforms due to a quirk in the signalling system. Usually a sign like this would take up to a year, yes a year, to be approved by Railtrack's signalling site team to ensure it was correct and could be seen by drivers appropriately. However, a year or even 6 months would be unacceptable and would delay the opening of the station. A station opening delayed by a sign is rather embarrassing, so Andy Harmer, project manager, rang up Railtrack's project manager, Neve Partridge, to get a signalling site team to Warwick Parkway as soon as possible to approve this sign. Luckily, the very next day, the signalling site team had a cancellation, so they were able to come up to Warwick Parkway and check out the sign. It was approved in less than 3 minutes, so the whole thing was rather ludicrous, and thus Warwick Parkway was able to open on time. Well, at least that's what they thought.
In 2000, fuel strikes swept the country and plagued construction at Warwick Parkway, nearly leading to a halt of all construction at the station. Luckily, Chiltern run diesel trains, so they were quickly able to get 18 barrels of petrol up from Aylesbury Depot to the site at Warwick Parkway, ensuring that construction did not stop during the strike. However, it was an earthquake of all things which nearly threatened to stop construction of the station. A magnitude 5.7 earthquake, which is actually pretty big in the UK, hit, and its epicentre was literally right here at Warwick Parkway. Luckily, a magnitude 5.7 earthquake isn't strong enough to do any major damage, and some builders didn't even report the shaking. So Chiltern had battled through a fuel strike, an earthquake, and Railtrack being Railtrack, opening Warwick Parkway on the 8th of October 2000 on schedule.
Checks had to be carried out regarding the platforms just before opening, as they are on a rather steep bank, and the gap from the train to the platform had to be constantly tested by different passenger types, such as children or those in wheelchairs.
Luckily for Chiltern, final clearance to the station opening was granted by fax, and a week later, the first passenger train started calling at the station. The station has been nothing short of a success. 50% of all users are from the Warwick catchment area. It's eased parking pressures of both Warwick and Leamington Spa stations. 80% of weekday passengers are from Warwickshire, whilst 30% of all passengers in the first 5 years of operations were new to rail, helping to reduce road traffic and being good for the environment, with 2.5 million vehicle kilometres per year being saved thanks to people taking the train instead of driving. Chiltern provides Warwick Parkway with a half-hourly service to Birmingham Mall Street and around a half-hourly service to London Marylebone via Leamington Spa. The service frequency is pretty good. The station is really well used. It is currently 11:30 on a weekday and there are loads of passengers down there waiting to board the train up to Birmingham. The station is definitely a success, and it was the busiest station in Warwick until COVID, where Warwick has now overtaken it. But it was one of the busiest stations in Warwickshire prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. At its peak, journey times from the station to Marylebone were only 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is insanely quick, thanks to Chiltern's project Evergreen. However, due to COVID, services have been slowed down to around 1 hour 35 minutes, but even so, that's pretty reasonable. It does mean that people can commute from the station to London. Services to Warwick Parkway are provided mostly by Class 168 and Class 68 diesel locomotive hauled services. These currently haul Mark 3s, but in the future these will be Mark 5A coaches.
The next train at platform 2 is the 11:39.
Yay, it's my train. Cross Country currently sees services pass through the station, but Grand Central have lodged an application to run a new service between Newcastle and Brighton, which, if successful, would call at Warwick Parkway. Chiltern also see passing services to Stratford-upon-Avon, which for some reason don't stop here. I'm actually not too sure why. I think it would be good for the area, but they only stop at Warwick and not Warwick Parkway.
The success of Warwick Parkway has led to several station improvements. The original station car park of 737 spaces was far too small. I for one remember driving my mum around the car park trying to find a space before going to London or Birmingham for the day. So many extensions have been undertaken. Firstly, in 2012, £2.5 million was given to increase the parking with 222 more spaces in the form of a multi-storey car park, which is built to have the same look and style as the rest of the station, whilst having a direct link to the London Bound platform. 2 more overflow car parks were subsequently added to the northwest of the station, although since COVID-19 these have been underused. Parking itself is rather expensive. Daily parking is currently £9.40, with weekend parking £6.25, with off-peak parking, costing the same as weekend parking, starting at 12 PM. Parking used to be just £5 all day, with there being a physical person helping you pay for parking. However, nearby is the Grand Union Canal, with there being a sneaky car park right next door to the Warwick Parkway one, with parking at this car park costing just £5.50 all day, and £3 after 10 AM. The station is one of few which has a departure board on entry to the car park. No regular bus services now serve the station, with the former 68 bus route being replaced by an on-demand bus service called Indigo. National Express also run a few buses a day to London via Heathrow from Coventry. Inside, the station building has had little changes really, bar a basic refurbishment, such as walls being repainted, new ticket machines, and a brilliant little cafe. The toilets have also recently had a refurbishment. As for the platforms, well, they are very long and can fit at least 8 coaches, which are the longest that Chiltern trains run. New displays have also been added recently, which, in my opinion, are pretty difficult to see unless you're literally right next to them. Each platform has 2 shelters, with the shelter furthest from the exit having old supports for a digital clock, which was removed at some point in the 2010s.
So then, we've gone through the entire history of Warwick Parkway. We've looked at the planning of Warwick Parkway Station, the construction of Warwick Parkway Station, the opening, the present, and even the future.
Overall though, Warwick Parkway is an amazing station in my opinion, definitely one of the best new stations we have in the UK in terms of its actual design and being thought through well. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.
So I hope you have enjoyed this mini documentary on Warwick Parkway. If so, smash like, smash subscribe, check out all my links in the description below. Thank you to all my members. My train is just arriving now. Thank you, goodbye.
And of course, a huge thank you to all my YouTube and Patreon members, including my first class members, Aaron Barry and Crispin McKee, my business zone members, Andrew Bowen, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Grieg, Clive's Travel and Trains, Craig Mitchell 43, Dave CDF, Gordon Walker, Jay Teco, JBNEL, Lewis C21, NJTE, Real, Scott Wheeler, That Transport Girl, and Will Ho, and my standard premium members, as well as all my standard members. Thanks so much, all your support is greatly appreciated. If you want to become a YouTube or Patreon member with exclusive perks such as early access to new videos, exclusive members only videos, and access to special channels in my Discord server, then all the information is in the description below. Thank you, and goodbye.